Welcome. Somewhat of a late start today. I had a few issues, and also I didn't really want to interrupt the last song. Kind of like where we were going with it, and it's good mood. So here I am. And well, today I plan on. Well, actually, I really don't have a particular plan today. I actually kind of lost. Though I do want to show or go through a few things from last stream that I felt I left somewhere in the confusing state. So I want to like clarify a few things. It's not something I've said that really controversial. It's more of a few things I did in Unreal and in Substance, and I didn't really explain a few of these things. So I think going through those would be a good thing. It's just going to take me maybe 20 minutes, first initial start of the stream. And one of those things is why I decided to pack my textures. For some, that makes total sense. You've been through that before, but there might be someone out there who see this for the first time and is like, well, I had no idea. What does that mean to pack texture? And I want to go quickly through what you can do in Photoshop or in, well, I guess you can even do it in GIMP if you want to. And then you have, of course, Substance Painter, which makes things a lot easier because you can create templates. So why do we pack textures? Well, the easiest answer and the simplest answer is it's to save on texture space, which means you will have fewer textures that you need in your game. So you can get away with a lot fewer textures to create a lot more details to your mesh. And the way you would go about doing that, for example, how about we swap over to the proper scene? There we go. So in a software like Photoshop, I can decide to pack all like things like the ambient occlusion, the roughness texture, and everything like that into the color channels of my textures. And what you're looking at right now is kind of weird normal map, and that is because the red channel and the green channel contains the X and Y values of our normal map. So our engine can interpret that as the direction of our light source. But in the blue channel, I have the ambient occlusion, and in the alpha, I have the metallic. Now, the way you can adjust this in Photoshop is that you will go to another texture. In this case, I'm going to use my roughness. I'm going to make a copy, which Control C. Well, you need to select everything, then do a Control C, go back to your normal texture, select your blue channel. I'm going to use the blue channel in this case, and then copy paste. And then you would just send it out as normal. It would go to your file. You would save it as either a TIFF, a Targa, or a PNG. PNG could be a good thing because you have this quick export. And then you would go back to Unreal. You would do re-import again, or you would import your texture, and it should look something like this, which is you can then go, once you've imported everything, you go to respective channels in your texture, and you can view them one by one or multiple at the same time. I can see now that for some reason, showing part of my, where are you? And some scuff. I want you to see parts of my, there you go, that's better. So yeah, that will be how you pack it inside Photoshop. The difference is, though, if you do it inside Painter, you would have to use a template, or you can use a fake export template, right? So you would go to your export, which you can find, I believe, in mode. Nope, edit. I remember. Let's see. So it's so you go to files, you go to export textures, and you would go to output templates. The good thing is that Unreal has already created, or Substance has already created an Unreal package. So if you use this, you can pack things like the opacity together with the base color. You will have your AO, your roughness, your metallic in one texture, and you will have your normal in one texture, and I believe the emissive in another. I've created a specific one for what I did earlier, which is I packed the red and green in the normal, then I packed the ambient occlusion and the metallic. It's quite simple to add these. So you just drag the one you want to the channel you want it in, and you select, in this case, gray channel, and you would have everything. If it's the ambient occlusion, you would go to base, if it's the base color, you would select base color, drag it, instead of gray, because now you need the 3 channels, because you want the red, green, and blue for your base color, you would just select the RGBA, the RGB channels, and there you go. Save this out, make sure it's used as the output template, click export, then you can save it, and then you're done. And inside Unreal, it's the same principle as before. You can re-import or import, check each channel if it's the correct one, and you're done. And the next step I want to show, and I'm going through this quite fast, next thing would be, how do I use these things? Like, why should I want... I explained like how you can save things like texture space, because now I can use these channels, just the red and green of my normal map, to generate the full normal texture, but I'm missing the blue channel for now. So in your material, what you would do is you would first of all create your texture. If you don't know, you hold down T, you select T, and if you have your texture selected before, and you will get it auto assigned. Otherwise, you go to this part, search for it, and you will find it. It's a usual Unreal thing. But what you do now is that you would drag out, and I'm just going to show you what I've done. So from the RGB, you would isolate the red and green channels. So now you have this texture. All right. From that, you need to do a normalizing calculation, which is, I'm not going to go into details. It's simple in the way that you add a constant bias scale, and you can see it on the settings. Bias is negative 0.5, which now means that the values goes from 0 to 1 down to negative 0.5 and positive 0.5. Then you multiply that, so now you have negative 1 and negative 1. So you multiply by 2 to get negative 1 and 1. From that, the derived normal Z node can correctly derive the blue channel, and it combines it with the X, Y, or the the red and green channels. And then you can add that to your normal, and it should look correct in your scene. All right. Hopefully all of this makes sense. And the next step will be, and the next thing I want to show is how you could create multiple colors using your base color. You can rework the base color to show multiple colors. So what you can do is you can desaturate completely, and with a tint, you can adjust your colors. And the way you would go about doing that is, in your material, you would use your emissive. In my case, the emissive. This works with the base color also, the setup. So you will grab your, in my case, again, the emissive, push it into a desaturation node. This is a scaler, which allows me to adjust it inside the material instance. And you add that by holding down S and clicking inside your scene, and you would call it something that makes sense to you. Connect that into the fraction part. You can clamp it if you want to, which means that no one can go above 1 or below 0 using the scaler. That value that you get from your desaturation, you pass into a blend overlay, and you will blend it with a vector color, vector 3 color. So you hold down the 3 button, you create your vector, you can right click it and convert it to parameter. Then that allows you to use that in your material instance. But we already have one, so I'm going to delete that. And from that, you can add it to, in my case, since I'm using a emissive, you can multiply the intensity of your emissive color by adding a multiply and a emissive node. Push that into your emissive color. And with that, you should have a setup that looks similar to this. And there you go. So I have the option to turn on or off my emissive. I can adjust the tint the way I want it to. Let's go with the bluish color. And I can also increase the intensity. I had it set to 30, but you can go up and down as much as you want. 0, of course, no emissive. And I've clamped this to 30. So, but you can go above that. You can go absolutely crazy if you want to. And it generates a very intense tint. I think that's it, though. Quite quick, I'm not sure if it's thorough, but it is my best way to explain a few things I missed last time. And that was a way to generate the blue values from the normals using the red and green, and then you had how to do packed texture inside Photoshop and how to do it in Painter, and finally how to do a desaturation, like actually updating or adjusting your models once you send it from Painter or whatever, and you can do it directly inside Unreal. I believe that's it, and I'm quite happy with the results with this. Quite spooky, and it works well. I think we are on the right track for the horror game I'm trying to develop. I'm not only trying, I am developing. Right. That was a lot in a very short time. But now I feel great because I was feeling a bit guilty leaving my explanation in the last stream. It was a poor explanation and I didn't show the proper steps last time. So I'm happy I could go back and show that properly. So, all right. Very intense start to this stream. So let's go to the more chill part, which I should have started with, because now I feel like I've ran a marathon. I'm just going to start painting, because the one thing I'm struggling with right now when it comes to my game is that I can't really figure out what to do, what the scare factor. I do have some ideas to like concepts I'm interesting. One is I do like the visuals, the Silent Hill and Amnesia games. So what I want to, of course, then is to kind of replicate that in my way. So it's going to be slightly more realistic, but not hyper realism. It's going to be like more of a, I want to refer to as a hint of hyper realism to it, because I want to reuse as much as the Megascans assets as I can. Because if I want to do create the world that I have in my head, it would take me quite some time, especially if I do it myself. Right now, I don't have an option to grab others and outsource what I want to do. So I have to stay realistic, and the game I'm envisioning and want to create, I need to save some time. So a few assets will be made using Megascans. Well, not made by using a lot of things will be built. The environment mostly will be built using Megascans stuff. And next, why I'm struggling. So that part is not where I'm struggling. I have a good idea where I want to get my assets and how to build the world in itself, because that's more technical with aspects of artistic touches to it. Where I'm struggling is once I've introduced the environment to the player. This is the intro has been done. I've gone through some of these simple mechanics of the game, like how to use the use button, things like that. What happens after that? I want it to be similar to the Lovecraftian universe in that it's more of a mental horror. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. Some games tend to, which is not bad, it's just not what I want to try, and I don't want to throw a monster at the character. Like, here's the monster, run away, or here's the monster, fight it back, or something like that. I want the player to feel that they don't have control over the situation, so their options are run or lose or hide. Perhaps they could probably hide, and I do want to try to not show the monster itself, mainly because I think the factor, once you've seen the character, once you've seen the monster, the horror tends to diminish. In most games, I'd say that happens, because now you know what you're up against. You might not be able to fight it, but once you see it, once you know what it does, and it's no longer an unknown. We humans tend to have a really vivid imagination. So as long as something is unknown, our worst enemy is our own imagination. I kind of want to go with that direction. And that's where I am right now. And that's kind of annoying in a sense, because I don't know how to move on. I'm thinking either I can do some basic block out of the world, which might help me do some realize the possibilities of the world. But I'm not sure. Another way is what I can show you. I can tell what I have right now is that I'm imagining this world to be on this environment, this game to take place in an isolated island at a lighthouse. That's what I have so far. So, oh, that is not the pen tool. There we go. So I do have. Excuse my penmanship. I'm not really used to working with Photoshop. So I do imagine this to be at a lighthouse, right? Let's just do this. Makes sense. We. And since it's going to be an island, there are. Should have prepared that. I'm going to see if I can find that image. I think it's called like a lonely lighthouse or something like that. Give me a second, I'll show you what I've found so far. Just want to make sure when I do a Google search, nothing inappropriate shows up. I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen, considering I'm looking for a lighthouse, not anything against TOS. But you never know, so I'm always want to be careful. And let's see. Okay, so let's. Can I just save you, or save what happens then? See if it's a good enough image. Hey Shrek, how you doing? Sorry, I missed your first message there. Kind of looking at off to the side right now. Looking for some cool reference images. All right, so here's one. Here's one image I found. I like the mood of this one. I'm not sure how I will be able to replicate the waves, so that might be might be tough. Then we have this one. This is a really cool concept, I think, where you have this big, I don't know what to call it, cliff. I guess that's the word for it, and it's completely isolating whatever's on top of that. I might think that's actually a monastery or something. I'm not sure if it's actually a lighthouse. It could have been. It doesn't look like it anymore. As I see lighthouse. But this one's probably the best one I found so far. The island, I'm imagining, needs to be quite a lot bigger than this. So I'm struggling with deciding on whether or not the player should be able to, or needs to go outside of the lighthouse and venture out to do certain things outside, puzzles or whatever, or if they should be remaining inside the lighthouse. Looking at this one, which is a really cool thing, is apart from the island itself, it seems to have this part to it, which allows you to have more rooms or things going on. So that could be a cool one. What do you have this one? So it's not really the mood I'm looking for, but it's on an isolated island. It's a bit higher up, which could be cool. So you could have a way to climb up. I'm not going to do a ladder or something like that, but perhaps we could make some kind of road that's been dug out along the way. Could be interesting. Or will they place like planks along the way and then you walk around and all the way up. I also played around with the idea of having a second island that you have to climb to. Both islands are isolated in a way, but you have like what you would call the rope bridge, right? Between. So I do have ideas. I'm just not sure how to convert those ideas into a proper game, right? Yes, yet. This is from ArtStation by someone. Just give them a proper name. Otherwise, it doesn't feel. I believe their name is Sayak, and it involves the fog, right? There's a few things we could, let's call it improvements, for lack of a better word. We'll make it more visual and refined. Again, I'm struggling with, this is not a bad composition. I'm just struggling with, there's a few things I want to change. Let's leave it at that. And then you have, this is actually might be the best one. I'm going to borrow this think that's a good start. Let's scale this up a bit. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, I can't move. Apparently not. I can probably do this, right? So here we have kind of what I'm talking about, the road leading up to the lighthouse. And I kind of like what we're doing. And that extra house could be something we could play around with. So instead of having the player run around an island, like the entire island, we would do something like this and isolate the player to this part. And perhaps at some point they have to run down the road, which is blocked for them. Like they can't do it while these events are happening. Once they subside or accomplish something, you might be able to start running around a bit more. I do like the composition or the idea of having these greenish, well, the greens, bushes and everything, foliage on top of the red rocks, sorry, on top of the rocks, right? And it could be fairly easy to make. You would grab the Megascans assets and a simple material which projects a mask on top of the rocks, and using another texture, so you lurk between the rock texture and that green grass texture, bush texture, whatever you want to call it. So I think that could be quite easily done. Yeah, so we have a few images to play around with, few concepts, few ideas. And I do like the last image. I'm going to create a PureRef, and I highly recommend, if you haven't used this, I would highly recommend trying it out. It's a good way to store, like, keep your references in one place. Grab all of these. So let's do some arrangements. Range. Let's do optimal. Let's also scale into roughly the same scale. I believe you can do that. Is it align? No, normalize, I believe. To size or scale? Let's try size. Yeah, that works. Do another images, range, optimal. There we go. So, based on this, I do believe PureRef will be on top while I'm working in Photoshop. Oh, that was not meant to be. There we go. All right. Let's move around a bit. It's really a boring pen, isn't it? So let's do a bit bigger. Is there anything else I can use? I mean, it's just fun, right? Let's try the dry media brush. What does that look like? That's a bit more fun. So, right. What are we looking at? I'm looking at you to be a bit smaller. So if we're looking at this image, we could determine at least that I want to have the lighthouse isolated in a way. Do a circle. And if we want the house, assuming something like this, we could have an area where you would probably run around, walk on, and way in and out. Let's do cliffs around, I don't know, something like this. Right? Yeah, kind of makes sense. Let's see. Gone. Actually, you know what? Let's move this entire thing. And let's move you something along these lines. All right, so playing with the idea of this being a completely isolated island. You would enter So let's say the intro to the game is that you start from a dock in this part. So you would arrive with a boat, right? And the way I have in my head is that I want the introduction to be completely dark or something along those lines. You can't really see what's happening, but you would have a lot of sound effects, right? So we'd have a lot of sound effects going around. It looks like a cross. That was better. And then you would, once that's over, I don't know how long it would last, but maybe 10, 15, perhaps 20 seconds. You would have a start at the dock. Right? Let's actually make this a, what color stands out? Red. That's good. I'm going to make these. No, I'm not going to pay that much attention to it. So let's start, say you start the X. And we could create a way up. Perhaps it should go around this way. Then up. Allows us to create ramp that's not too steep, right? Then this is the part I've gotten this far. Now things are kind of blur in my mind what to do from now on. That's where things are falling apart. And I had one thought during the day is you've probably seen the Amnesia water monster. Write that down. Within quotation. It's the Watermon, which that monster were always hidden, right? But you can see the splashes it made on top of the water as you yourself were in it. It would start to hunt you, and you would see splashes. And if you don't jump out of the water fast enough, it will grab you, and you will die. So I was thinking, what if we do something similar to that, in the sense that it would now be a, not a wind monster, that makes no sense, but it will be a invisible monster. We can do a invisible entity, let's call it entity. And it would use sound effects. That's how you know where it is. Alternatively, we could also add that it displaces fog. Right? Another one, because that's how far I got with that. It came to me just today while I was out walking. And it's kind of my interpretation of this so-called, this water monster without having it be inside the water. The downside with this thing, with this invisible entity, is I'm slightly concerned it would be too hard for the player not to know where it is. But then again, it would probably be easier just to create that monster and see if it's too hard or not, rather than doing all of these what ifs in my head. And it would require quite a lot of sound effect stuff, and that's not my forte. I'm not really experienced in that part at all, and it would require me to find quite a lot of online sources. Alternatively, hopefully I can find someone that is willing to do some commissions for me, but I do not have a big budget for this game. So who knows? We'll see. And I also plan, since this is going to be my first game, I don't want to be too extreme, and I do want to release it for free, just to, hey, look at what I can do. It's fun, and I just kind of want to do it for free. Another monster, let's see if I can remember, what was it? I had it on my tongue. Another one that I kind of like. Why? I just lost it. What was it? Was it an Amnesia one? I can't remember. I don't think it was. I don't like when this happens. When you have thoughts, and seconds later, because you were slightly distracted by something, or I don't know, distractions, right? And you lose it. You have it, but you lose it. Perhaps it will come to me. Well, an alternative. Let's do this, because one downside with the invisibility is the fact that will it always be unknown? Excuse my crow's feet. Always unknown? Yeah, let's leave it at that. That's poor English, but who cares, right? So you have amnesia, where you have regular, let's call it the zombie monster. I don't think that's a proper name of it, but it's just this monster that walks around and looks like a stitched together corpse. And that's the best, a good way of explaining what it is. Then you have this amnesia water monster. What else can you go for? I mean, you have Silent Hill. Not super familiar with the monster for that game, but I feel that they are more similar to that walking corpse monster. They will either hunt you as some kind of demon-esque type of monster or creatures. I do want to avoid that, because then, unless I do, if I go that route, now all of a sudden you will have a visual of the monster. And I want to avoid that. At the same time, I don't want that to be the idea of keeping a monster unknown. I don't want that to be what stops me from creating this game. So if I can't keep to that promise, or that goal, I'm just going to scrap it. Want to try. I really want to try. So what else do we have? I mean, we can do some supernatural stuff. Let's write down super. Supernatural events would be things like, I guess, Poltergeister. Polls. Oh, God. Wow. Polster. Yeah, I have no idea. That's probably wrong. I don't really care. Then we have regular ghosts, I guess. And it could be a combination of multiple monsters or events or supernatural things that could happen. So what else is scary, though? I mean, why am I scared of? That's a good question. What am I scared of? I do have fears. I do absolutely have fears. They might not be of a supernatural or horror game-esque events. Of course, I would be terrified if I saw a corpse walking towards me, of course. Right? A zombie, I wouldn't really look at it like, that's insane. No, I would be scared. Of course I would. Because that's not happening in real life, right? What else? I mean, I don't like spiders. Then again, I'm not sure if I personally think spiders is really part of the horror genre. In a sense, I guess they are. And I'm probably going to have a lot of people fight me on that one. But what else? What scares me? Something that's invisible, I can't fight back. That would be scary. And I guess that's the part, though. Like the idea of having something you cannot fight back. You don't have the control. Like whatever you do, that thing is just going to keep coming. What? Perhaps just a Google search again, because I'm kind of drawing blanks here. Type. I mean, we could probably look at the SCP stuff, perhaps. Would that be a thing? I could also look at some of the folklores that we have here in Sweden. That could be interesting. Like creatures from let's go with Nordic folklore. Norse folklore. Okay, Norse. That sounds good. Maybe not, because then we would get the Sleipnirs, the Fenrirs, the Jörgmundar, whatever we call it. Might not be the best option. You have trolls, but these are monsters, like proper scarecrow stuff, right? More interesting in the Lovecraftian. I guess I'm not too familiar with any of these. Perhaps that's my big weakness right now, is that I really don't have a proper understanding or a deep enough understanding. I probably should spend more time. Well, we can see what we can get. The creatures, called Lovecraft. I mean, that's probably a very generous description, right? Creature from Lovecraft. Nothing really stands out, so I'm gonna have to think of something else. So, one intro. Oh, look at that spelling. It's even worse than I thought. Polster, Grease. Polstergeist, at least. There you go. Perhaps it's really more about. It's probably more about me lacking enough knowledge in the genre. And that's part of the realization, right? Once you're working on something, just having it written down or start to really dig deep into it, that's when you start realizing, okay, I'm lacking here. This is not where I can do anything right now. So I need to do something, which in my case now would probably start reading. I should probably look up stories. Probably no more Let's Plays, because that's where I've got most of my stuff, right? Looking at people playing games. That's scary. I guess one event could be, I mean, you have Shadows, right? What else could be scary? I mean, certainly Whispers, which is part of sound effects, right? And perhaps with this big one right here, you can have something that's inside of the cliff. Perhaps that could be fun. The idea of having something like a cave. All right, so what else? What are other entities that's usually quite hidden to the player? I mean, poltergeists, we have ghosts, you have imaginary shadows that kind of looks like either a person or something more scarier than that. And of course, you can do side SFX whispers. That would be really scary. Probably the biggest part I need to focus quite a bit on, maybe even the most, because that's also where I'm lacking the most. I do want the idea of keeping this entity as an unknown for as long as possible. The entirety of the game will be something. Move this to the side. So let's just look at. Yes, we can look at the mood of the environment now. Hello, Naloth. Naloth, sorry. Hack the planets? What are we looking at? What we're talking about? You're really not. I'm not following. I assume it's something funny, but I'm missing that part. Um, I dab. I dab a bit every now and then as a programmer, mostly artist stuff. But I do want to dig into that. I need to do it because I'm making a horror game. C++ and some blueprints. Oh, okay. Actually, now that you put it like that, I feel like I've perhaps seen this before. There you go. All right. Now I know a bit about that. All right. If it's hard to convert blueprints to C++, I mean, there's no really, as far as I know, a way to like right click a blueprint and tell it to, hey, make it into a C++, right? So in that sense, yes. It's, you might say it's slightly harder in most cases. In some cases, really hard. It's all up to what you're trying to make. Because some logic, well, the logic is the same, but how you find the correct function or way to actually write the code. No, not like that, just reprogramming it to copy the blueprint. It can be harder. But I'd say in most cases, it's probably just slightly harder, just because it's C++. And if you don't have much experience with C++, I'd say it's harder than making the blueprint itself. Haven't really given the idea of much thought of what's harder or not. But I'd say it is harder, but not super hard. If that's a good explanation. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as I understood AI, it's the bell curve, right? It goes, this is the code it will give you from the database. It will not give the worst one. It will not give you the best one. It will give you the mid code. And usually the AI tend to confuse what you want, because at the same time, it's trying to interpret what you're trying to ask it the same way. Oh, you probably mean this. And then it gives you code that's probably what you need. It's always the probably stuff. I find AI to be more of a way to explain concepts rather than actual code. It does help with code, but in the end, you still need to be really selective and go through it yourself. Make sure you understand what's happening and look it up, whether or not it's actually proper. For concepts, that's fine. I think that works well. Well, I'm glad you're here. Lurk is absolutely fine with me. Lurk as much as you want. But if you do have anything you want to input on harder games, I'm all open to questions. Or if you have like, oh shit, you said that? I like this, please. But if you want to lurk, please. Because right now I'm working on kind of breaking through a barrier, because I'm struggling with finding out, like really tinkering with the idea of what my horror game should be. I know in my head what I want the player to feel. And probably so, how should I convey that in gameplay? Right now, I'm just writing down anything I can think of. And I want, right now, it's on mood. I want it to be eerie. I want it to be slightly realistic, I guess. I don't know, eerie is the only word I can think of. Oh, this adjective, is that the proper word for it? Like descriptive words. I guess dark would be one way. That's really generic. Airy, dark. I wanted people to feel isolated. It's unsure. Excuse the poor crow's feet. The U and N tend to look exactly the same. I did have another game in my head earlier. I lost, because Amnesia is one big inspiration. And Silent Hill, of course, but I'm not super familiar with their... Fair enough. Hey, if you're just here to learn something, I'm glad. Yeah. And hopefully I can show you something. But if you have a question, please. But anyway, please just lurk, and I'll do my best to be entertaining. Because I really want to break through this barrier. So we have the start intro. We have a path up. I know that they want them to be introduced to a moody, eerie sound effects. I want them to be isolated. So this needs to be quite a lot of like no music. I guess no music would be a good thing. I'm not sure if the mood is proper. Let's just do it to no music. I guess maybe this idea of an invisible entity hunting you is probably my best option for now. Because what would that mean? We would need a VFX, right? Kind of. That's what I have in my head, at least. Something that's on the ground, and as the creature gets close to you, it kind of pops things around it. At least that's how the Amnesia water monster did it. You saw the ripples on top of the surface. And of course you need SFX, sound effects, which in this case would probably be footsteps. That feels also too generic. Do you really want to have an invisible entity and it makes footsteps that sounds like a big boot? But at the same time, it should probably be some kind of footsteps or SFX, right? So I think the big one is this part where you talk about displacing fog. How would that go? How would I do that? So if I have fog, it would probably be volumetric fog. The creature then enters from the side, or I guess from somewhere. The way it would work is, I assume, you would have a shape, in this case, probably a circle. And that circle would repel the fog around it using a sphere mask. So we'd probably control something with the material. So this will be a fog material. Fog mat, right? And if you create at the center point of this shape, you tell what the nodes inside the material that around it you have a area. And that area will also affect fog. So the fog will get pushed this way, and this mask will then intercept that inside your material. And the output would be a fog with a hole in it where the sphere is. I've done that before. It works quite well. At the time, I didn't like the way it looked though, but perhaps I can do something more interesting about that. I need to look into it. That could be something. Let's delete all of that. But none of that matters unless I can figure out why the player should be scared of this game. I mean, being on an isolated island, I guess that's scary in itself, but you likely get used to the idea. Eerie stuff, of course, whispering. And you have my polster. It doesn't even say polter. It says polstergeist, which is probably, I'm going to go with probably, but I know it's not right. The game itself? Is that what you're referring to? I do have other projects I've made, but if you're thinking about this particular game. So yes, the answer to that is yes, but it's very early stuff. Okay. Sure. Just a disclaimer though, although I can show you stuff, it is partially broken, part of it. But I'd love to show you a few of the things I worked on while kind of moving along in this project. Absolutely. The one idea I had early on was the thought of having these statues in your level. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, this is a level crash because the code is broken. But what would happen is that you would see this creature in front of you, or the statue that has a glowing sphere, surrounded by fog. You're also surrounded by fog. And as you get closer, you will start pulsating. And once the pulsation gets to a certain point, you would then call on this entity that's in the sky. In this case, it would be a big eye that would hunt you. So the concept was, you, like, imagine in Indiana Jones inside the labyrinth, you would try to get to the other side, but everything will be more airy, more horror-esque, rather than that action-oriented indie stuff. But you would kind of be in this forgotten cave with labyrinth in it. So hopefully I can show you something. I know there's one other scene that might work better, but again, the code seems to be broken. Let's try that again. If not, I can show you something else that we worked on the past few weeks. Let's go to the main level, I think. Nope, it's not the wrong one. Should probably start removing a ton of these things. I don't know why, but I can't move around. Move now? Oh, here we go. Yeah, no, my code is absolutely breaking everything. So sorry, man, I can't really show you. That was made before I decided to stream, so everything's broken. I mean, it is game development, right? It's almost like there's some kind of entity trying to stop you from creating, or at least showing off your stuff. But it makes me realize I should probably fix these things so once anyone else asks, and if they do, I am ready. So that's a good thing you ask, so I can look into that part. Before I forget, I need to add the idea of the lantern being some kind of, well, I don't know, pickup. Whatever I want to pick up. Let's make that a bluish color, or purplish probably. What would you call it though? The lantern should be a, what would you call an object, a device that starts beeping or whatever you want to call it once you get near something? Let's just write down lantern. Again, ignore my English because right now I don't have any AI to help me spell. It's not a ChatGPT AI. It's an old style AI before ChatGPT. Just checks my spelling for me. All right, so that could be a fun thing. That once the player leaves the house, or maybe even inside the lighthouse, the lantern can help the player do what? I mean, keeping track of whatever's hunting them. But what happens then? So let's do this. Non visible to visible? Question mark. Perhaps to discover hidden stuff. Hidden items / clues. I'm not sure if I like personally too into that part, but it might be interesting to play around with. What else should we play around with? What else could be like a fun horror-esque, or not horror-esque, actually horror? I might be putting myself in the corner by going with the philosophy or the goal of having a always unknown entity, right? I feel like every time I watch a Let's Play or someone reviewing a game, they tend to give the same feedback, which is as soon as they realize that that's what's hunting them looks like something or acts a certain way, the horror tends to dim down and it's no longer as scary. Which tells me something I might want to do is have multiple, what you would call it, behaviors to the creature, or whatever we want to call it. Let's call it an entity. The entity should have multiple behaviors, right? One behavior might be just pure chasing, like behaviors. Let's see. So one will be chasing. Another one, I guess, could be throwing things at the player, or perhaps altering the environment. And why we want to do that is if the player is always going to be chased, then we're going to find how to counteract the creature. Sorry, the entity. You know what? Let's go with creature. It's just what rolls off my tongue all the time. So chasing could be one behavior. And if we give them a different behavior at some point, it might catch them off guard. And like, wow, okay, so now we're dealing with this. I don't know how to deal with whatever this is. So now we're kind of pushing the player back to that unknown part yet. But it still looks the same, but now it's doing something different. Kind of like that. And number 3, I don't know yet. That could be something. So we can, if we can find 3 behaviors, then we could alternate, not randomly, definitely not randomly, but kind of take the player by surprise. So let's say we have 3 acts in a short game. The first is chased by the monster creature. And the second one is, well, now you're expecting to chase, but now we're going to give you something else. And of course, then you will do it again. If you do it more than 3 times, I think the player would kind of catch on, but maybe not in as much as they realize, okay, so in the 4th time, this is going to happen. No, but you know there's going to be a 4th time, or there might be a 4th time. So that would be something. I'm going to increase the size of you. Need more space. Not sure why there's a... Oh, that's probably... Oh, that's that layer. So we can probably just do that. There you go. Let's just move you a bit in. There we go. Perfect. So that is something. But what else? This doesn't really help me move on. I'm still struggling with my original wall, which is once the player has been introduced to the environment, now these hard things should happen, right? I'm not sure if I want to have this invisible thing walking around terrorizing. So what else? Let's break down the SFX stuff just to have something to do. Might help me realize something. I don't know. So what do I want? I want, yes, wind, water, waves. What else do we need? Do we want to go for something howling in the distance? Perhaps some kind of bird that has really weird sound. I know there are some... If you ever heard a deer screaming, that's one of the most terrifying things you've ever heard. Look it up. It's... Well, look it up. I'm warning you, though. It is kind of offsetting. So we can add something like that and offset it like a horrifying animal scream. Let's do a howling. Howling scream. I feel like I'm going to have to apologize for my crow's feet every 5 minutes because it is terrible. I don't even know if that's a U or an L. Well, I know what it is, but if someone else saw it, they might not see 2 L's. Or whatever this is. What else do we have? Well, whispers, I guess that. I mean, I'm going to put footsteps within parentheses. No, actually, because I need the player to have footsteps. Let's move. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. What else? Let's do... What else do I want? Yeah, wind, we had howling. Water waves. Not sure if that's the proper term, but let's go with howling screams, whispers, footsteps. I was about to write down door noise, door hinge, door squeak. Is that the right word? Let's go with door squeak. That doesn't sound right. All right. Let's see. Branch, break. What that means. Stones falling could be something. I was thinking one of the early ideas I had for this concept of a lighthouse environment would be that the player had to exit the lighthouse to go somewhere. And that could be across a rope bridge. But the thing is, although I like the idea, nothing comes to mind to why they should do it. I mean, it could be to pick something up. Oh, actually, one of the original ideas I had was, let's call this objectives. Oh, let's go with red. One of the original objectives was to fetch some fuel for the lighthouse, but this is an old lighthouse. That's what's in my head. You need fetch fuel. Lighthouse. But then again, how do you make that scary? Just walking there? But that makes it a walking simulator, right? Or we could play with the idea that you walk there, you expect something, but nothing happens. And that uncanniness of not having that expected release of terror might be something that creates a feeling of something's wrong, perhaps. What else could be a objective? I don't want to make this too, hey, you're on a quest now to find this mysterious or solve this mysterious thing that you saw in a diary type of story. I do want it to be more grounded in reality, which makes no sense considering I'm talking about all these supernatural things, right? But what I'm trying to go for is more, let's say in our world, supernatural stuff actually exists, right? But not those quests of, hey, there's a old grave somewhere. You need to find it because in that grave there's an old mausoleum of riches and whatever weird stuff. More, hey, walk to this part, but beware. Something might haunt you on the way. Does that make sense? I mean, it does in my head, but that's not the point. That's not why I'm trying to explain it. Oh, what else could happen? Why would I want to leave the house? I mean, I could be chased out, right? Let's call it running away. That could be another one reason why you're no longer wanting to be inside the lighthouse. Ooh, I don't need this right now. I love it, but I don't need that music right now. So what else? Right, one game. That's probably the game I was thinking about. So one game that I liked was a fan-made game about the siren head creature. And if you don't know the siren head, it's kind of this big lanky creature, stick figure that I'm doing right now, that has these siren heads. But for some reason, it also has teeth. I don't know why. And if I remember correctly, once it also gives that old military "watch out, here comes the bombs" sound, right? But as far as I can remember, it also could intercept radio signals. And if you have a radio on you, it could tell you stuff on the radio, like fake stories, fake news, that if you're lost in this wood, it tells you, well, help is on the way. You need to go to this place, but what's waiting on the other side of that place is, well, of course, Siren Head. That's kind of scary, and it's tall, and you can't really kill it. So in that game, rather than killing it, you scared it away. So if you shot at it, it kind of, well, I don't like this, so I'm going to run away, but I'll be back, type of thing. Kind of like that. That was fun. Well, let's see, what could be a third objective? Why would I want to leave the lighthouse? What else could I want? So we run away from something, or we're going to fetch fuel. I guess I could try No, not really. But what if instead of having this my head right now, bridge, let's call it bridge, where you end up early on, perhaps that bridge will be further away. So you realize, I don't want to be here anymore. I contacted whoever, and they are on the way again. And now I need to run away, which is, of course, this part. But this is more, you're chased out, right? So let's add that. This is not you choosing to go for someone who will be rescuing you. This is more like, okay, I have no choice. If I don't leave the lighthouse, I'm dead. This could be traveling to safety. Say across island. Right? What could that look like? So we would have the island with lighthouse and perhaps that building. What actually, now that I think about it, that bridge could still be there. That could still be where you enter. Give some color. But the way to get to safety would be to try cross over to a different island. Using this rope bridge. But why would it be on a different island? So just add some more fun details like this. Why would you go over to this side? Well, safety, sure. But why would this island be safe? Why not this part? Why isn't that bridge safe? Well, one reason could be that there's something on the other side that ensures you're no longer isolated, or perhaps there's an old bridge with a boat. I'm going to make the best boat. There we go. That's not a boat. That's a boat, all right? So there could be an old abandoned boat on that side. I'm going to misspell this, but let's go with that. So there's an old abandoned boat that the player could rush for and hopefully get to safety. But you wouldn't know about this boat until you read a diary or a log that's in the lighthouse. There's a log. Let's call it diary. Right? And once you've read that, you now know that, oh, if I cross this bridge, I can get to safety, hopefully, because of this boat, but it's uncertain because you don't know if the boat is still whole, like if it can still sail. It's an old boat. All right. Yep. Do some artistic flares. Okay, so that's something. But it's not like it's, once you're over on the other side, it's not a straight line to the boat. Instead, you're forced to either go around like that. Perhaps you're forced to go this way. Or this way. And along the way, there might be obstacles. I don't know. Perhaps there's an obstacle in the way. Or can whatever haunts you in the lighthouse also haunt you outside? Can you be followed? I don't know. But I do feel like I'm getting somewhere. It's one of those things again. What's the harder thing that's supposed to happen between the lighthouse? I think the lighthouse is fairly easy to create some horror-esque themes to. Be lights turning off, you can move stuff, you can hear screams. But once you're outside, that's where I'm falling short. Might also be that the theme on this island makes things quite hard to figure something out, right? It would be easier if it's an old abandoned house. I assume it would. Let's see. Oh, that's wrong. All right, let's. I'm gonna make a to-do for future things. So let's do a to-do. And one of the things I believe is more research, R&D. And that includes, like, that's just reading. I need to read more. Let's find a SFX library, would be nice to have. Would also need still a cross. I mean, I'll need to learn how to do sound effects in Unreal or implement that. Let's write down learn about SFX Unreal. Let's do 5 because that's what I'm working in. So that is probably what I need to focus on moving forward. And this stream was kind of an experiment too. So one of the things feel it's lacking in my everyday life right now is time. I do love the streaming part. I do love it. But if I don't have like these things I'm working with on right now clear in my head, it's really hard for me to sit down in Unreal and develop the game. And this experiment I'm doing right now is kind of, can I do all of these concepts and like brainstorming online and still be entertaining, right? Because that's the end. This is the final game. The end goal of this stream. I do want to be entertaining. Certainly want to teach people stuff and learn stuff. Absolutely. So I don't know if this is interesting to people. Please just let me know. Because I would love to probably continue doing these things. Because it is a way for me to find the time during the week to explore what my game should be in the future. You know what we could actually do? This is not really important, but it might make this perhaps a bit more interesting rather than watching all of this Photoshop stuff. Or we should have done this from the beginning. All right, there we go. I think that's better. I do have a few ideas. I'm not sold on the invisible entity stuff. Because again, once you're outside the lighthouse, what then? And I might have to rethink the environment. A lighthouse could be cool. Could, definitely. But perhaps there's a better place to create this environment, the thing I have in my head. Because right now it's more atmospheric rather than gameplay-esque, right? I think that is the case. So for the next couple of streams, rather than doing what I'm doing right now, I want to go back to modeling, I think, and see if I can get some creative juices going by working on a new model, which in this case will probably be tackling that lighthouse. I think that could be fun because it's a bigger project, and I could look into and then show and learn, show some cool techniques. I think that could be interesting to a lot of people. I hope it could be interesting to a lot of people. Certainly will be fun. I guess that's a big part. A big one is to have fun. So I need to lock you. All right. What else can we do? There's still a bit of time left on the stream. As fun as it is, I could probably spend some time gathering some references for whatever, for the lighthouse, I think. Perhaps that could help, like, kick the creative juices going, make them going. Yeah, sure. But I'm also going to be a bit careful because I don't want to show everything that Google tells me. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. You never know. TOS and everything. And scary stuff I've noticed, at least I noticed that when I tried to create like a small, what you call it, like a small story, short story with the help of ChatGPT, like AI stuff, what happened was that it couldn't generate the things I wanted because there was a limitation to what it could actually tell me. Because it couldn't be too gory, it couldn't involve certain, what should I call it? Like, there were certain subjects it kept away from. And it makes sense. We don't want people to abuse whatever horrifying stuff they were talking about. But yeah, that was kind of unexpected to run into that problem. Let's see, what can we look at? So old lighthouses, really cool ones. I should go to Pinterest straight away. Is it? I mean, there's certainly some cool visuals regarding like the ocean, the atmosphere with the lighting and everything when it comes to lighthouse. I mean, just looking at this one, just give me a second, I'll pop it up. You can just add it straight away to PureRef. The feeling of isolation on this one is really cool. I like that. Although it's not really the eerie feeling, but you can imagine having this really tall building, and you could probably have some kind of events happening in rooms across the bottom. Let's say you have a center room, you would have something happening in that part. I don't know. What else can we do? What else? I mean, bridges. Oh, this one. This is really cool. Ooh, I like the atmosphere. And it's unfortunately AI. Of course, Pinterest would have AI. I'm not surprised. But hey, that's what it is right now. Everything's AI. You would have this one. I like how dilapidated the entire thing is, and that you only have this small shack. It's down by the river, and you have this big wall. Can we do something with that wall? That could be cool, I think. You have to climb it? That sounds like a terrible coding thing, but what else can we do? Is this also AI? Probably is. I'm gonna assume everything is AI until I see something else. Something that indicates that it isn't AI. With this, we could probably work more with the idea of you having to live in this house, and that's the house which is haunted, right? But you're still a lighthouse keeper, so you would have to go outside into that lighthouse and keep it lit. And perhaps if you don't keep it lit, then something scary can happen. Right? So what could that mean? What could be so horrifying that if you don't keep the lighthouse lit, you'll end up losing the game, right? So let's write that down before I forget. So number 4, objective will be to what? Keep lighthouse lit. So let's see, what else can we do? It usually helps a lot to do these, like looking at various images and things like that. Oh, come on. I am pushing the right button. We also have this image, which also like that idea of it's more airy than the other ones. I'm not sure if it's proper that it's so far into what looks like a forest, but the house itself and the color scheme, I do like that. What else do we have? Is that also AI? It's called Abandoned in Jungle Unseen Lighthouse. That makes no sense, does it? Then you have, and I think perhaps of all the images we've seen today, perhaps this one shows the atmosphere I'm looking for. I kind of like that it's outside in the snow. What else do we have? I'm not sure about this one. And again, this is AI. But well, other than there's actually snow inside, which makes no sense. But I do like, again, the atmosphere of the lighting inside. And you can have this desk inside where you will probably find that diary we're talking about, or the logbook. Probably keep a log. We could have you being, oh, maybe we should explore the idea of cabin sickness. I think that's the term for it. So cabin sickness, if no one knows about that, is when people are locked into a house for a long time, and that happens in areas such as Siberia, I think, and way north, where you can't really be outside and do stuff during winters because it just snows so much. So you're kind of locked in your house or your cabin. That's why it's called cabin sickness. But you kind of start to go insane while you're out there. And that's probably the best. Oh, we could probably play around with cabin sickness quite a bit. I like the idea of having some kind of progression to the game where you every day you have to do this, but once you've done that, it kind of flips to the next day, and perhaps it will eventually flip over to third month or after a year, and you will slowly be more and more insane. That is kind of fun, actually. I'm going to write that in green so I can see it. Cabin sickness. Kind of like that. Let's call it slow insanity. That's probably my best bet to kind of slowly make the character, the player controls go insane. I kind of like that. What else? What else could Pinterest offer us? Perhaps something along this line. And I'm going to show you just in a second. And so what this goes, I'm thinking, so if we have an abandoned place, so we could have an abandoned port, a fishing harbor, whatever the correct term is. Was this also AI? No, it doesn't look like AI this time. At least there's no tag. And this could be where we end up after a while, where the player realizes, well, shit, I need to get off this island, and there is a place. Okay, so you could probably be left. Okay, so what if instead of... So the original idea was that when you went to the island, you had a mission to keep the lighthouse going, and someone will pick you up after X amount of time. But what if you were left there, left alone? No one came for you. So you had to get off the island. So let's try that. So left / abandoned on the island. And this will be long time. All right. What else do we have? You can really find some cool imagery on Pinterest. There's some really cool artists out there. I don't even know what to make of this one. I'm not going to show. I think that might be much for TOS. Perhaps not. I don't know. I'm not going to take a chance. All right, we could. What about this? Oh, come on. Snippet tool. So what if we also have a church somewhere on the island? You didn't know about it. No one knew about it because it was forgotten and old. But again, you found this through your diary, or you were out looking for something. I don't know why you would, but let's say you did. You came across this abandoned church. Again, not sure what's going to happen at this place. But if we had progression of you're being on this island for a long time, let's make a bit more space. So instead of, we could actually just reuse this, I guess, but let's go with, you have an island with, again, lighthouse and cabin. Then you have an island up here. Perhaps there's also a third island somewhere. That's a terrible island. And you don't know about these islands. You're very much isolated to this part. Or here's another thought. So there's a Stephen King adapted movie. I don't remember the name. And slight spoilers. I can't give you details, but there's some slight spoilers to this movie. In the end, I like the entire thing is here. I think it's called The Mist. And in The Mist, there's this group of people that are forced to live in a gas station. I might be very wrong on this. I never read it myself, but that's the way I remembered it being told to me. And The Mist kind of takes people if you go outside. You don't see them again. And people start to assume that they're now gone, missing. Like KIA. And no one wants to leave. And I'm not going to end the thing because it's really something you should see because the ending is amazing. Although, again, I haven't seen it, but I know of the ending. Oh, sorry for hitting the mic. But what if you can't see across this? You're surrounded by a mist for years, or perhaps for a long time. So let's just do a mist / fog. It's just, I'm just taking notes a long time. You're isolated on this little island, but you will eventually find a way over because a bridge appears one day, not from nowhere, but there might be something obstructing your outside of the mist. It might be something like a cliff or I don't know, but something covers your path over. You can't see it. On the other side, you would have to walk around a bit. Eventually, you'll end up at this church. Kind of makes sense to me. I'm not saying the church will actually help you. It might be something you feel like, oh shit, there might be people over there. I know, I'm being abandoned for such a long time, so finally some people. But there's no people there. But then you also have, on the other side, you might find the harbor. And again, I'm gonna paint, draw amazing boats. This needs to be really unnecessary. So you're isolated on this island. And then there's some hope. Question mark. And perhaps more hope, but in this case, it's freedom. I don't know. I'm starting to kind of like that idea of you having that type of progression. It feels also like a very big game, so I might scale it down. I don't know. I'm kind of sold on that idea. We'll see. Pinterest apparently my savior because I'm finding a lot of things that kind of inspire me here. What else can we find? Ooh, this one I like. Save this just because I kind of like the layout, the composition of this one. This is a nice composition. The idea of you walking towards this thing, imagine it being quite a lot more eerie. So if you have similar colors to, let's see what's underneath. So if you mix these colors, remove the bright colors from the right one, and you add it to more of these bluish cold tones and darken the water. Everything's more blue and dark, the higher contrast. I think that could be cool. I would really love to have the experience and expertise to create like a big tentacle arm going all the way in on that part, but yeah, it's not my thing. Part of me would love to try and do it. It's one of those moments where you feel like I feel motivated to do it. I feel like shit, it would be really fun to tackle that type of challenge, right? I'm also well aware that I'm limited on time, so the things I can create is also unfortunately limited. So I have to pick one. I can either focus on the game and purely make something cool from that, or I can focus on that arm tentacle, which I could add to the game. It might actually improve the gameplay. But imagine the time though. How long would it take to me to properly create something that I would be at least half happy with? Like, not completely happy with, but just enough that I feel like this is good enough to be in a game. It might look weird, might look sloppy, but it's moving like a tentacle, looks like a tentacle. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. I mean, that could be months, especially with the time I have. I have roughly 3 or 4 hours if I'm really trying every day, outside of work, outside of life in general, to work on my stuff. So if I spend that 3 or 4 hours, which roughly, let's say 15 to 20 hours a week, if I can, I might not be able to, because it's difficult to add that extra 20 hours on top of another 40 hours work, right? So realistically, I might only have 5, 7, perhaps 10 hours a week. And how long would it take me to learn to do that tentacle thing? That could be, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 work weeks, which would be 7 times 40, right? 200 something. So no, that would be the rest of the year. And then all of a sudden, it's 2026. And then I can start in the game, but I don't know. And then you have the streaming. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff. So I'm thinking learning the tentacle thing, although cool, I have to pick my battles, and I'm going to have to focus on what I know I can do, learn something. Maybe 10%, maybe 20% of what I do is new, and I learn something from it. It has to be within a certain scale. Can't be big. Can't be really big. Too big. So that's always something to take into consideration, I feel, when you pick a project. Because the last thing you want to do is pick something and you can't finish it because you don't have the time. Scale it down to something that you know you can finish within a reasonable time, and you decide on what's reasonable. And that kind of leads into your first project kind of thing. I'm kind of sidetracking a bit, but there's some correlation here. If you're interested in making games, your first project perhaps shouldn't be your dream project, although that will probably be fun to work on. Reality, though, tells most me on my experience is that if you start working on your favorite game, your favorite idea, and you realize there's a lot of limitations to what you can do, therefore you have to limit your dream game, you have to scope it down. And that might be devastating, actually. Because all of a sudden, this big fantasy of a game you have, which all of us have, that are interested in games, and perhaps even some other people, then all of a sudden that becomes less fun, less fantastic in your head. And that's also something to keep in mind. What you have in your head is very hard, if not impossible, to get on paper. That's a figure of speech, but to get out, right? So even then you have a challenge only in that part. But if you're limited to what you can do, then all of a sudden you have to scope back and back and back. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't like my game anymore. My dream game is no longer the game I envisioned. That's sad. That's no fun to feel that way. So my recommendation, my tip, create a few small games first that ties into what you want to make. Not the full game, not perhaps even looking like the game you want to make in the end, but you learn something that you know you will have, and that will benefit you once you actually start making that fun game. All games should be fun, of course, but I'm talking about your favorite, your ideal game. So if you have an idea, break it down into smaller pieces that could probably be in a game by itself. Make that, release that as a game, learn from feedback, take that with you, create another small project, release that, take it with you. Once you've done that a few times, you probably have a lot more, no, you will have a lot more experience and tools to create that ideal game you wanted. Perhaps not fully, but compared to where you were, absolutely. And I've made that mistake myself. So it's not me preaching like I'm better in any way. No, absolutely not. I made that mistake many times. So I guess to keep it short, my tip, if you want to make your first game, don't make your favorites. You can absolutely, but don't do it. My recommendation, and focus on smaller games that you feel you can do in like a month. Make 5, 6 of them, then make a big game. That's probably more for beginning level developers rather than experienced ones. They've already gone through all this and managed to come out intact on the other side. I mean, creating a ghost or a poltergeist, that could be fun. question is though, it kind of contradicts the goal I had, you know, the never see or keep the creature unknown. The ghost is not unknown. You know, as soon as you've seen the ghost, you now know what it looks like, right? Unless again you change behavior and therefore also change its like looks, but that's more work, a lot more work, and I'm not sure if that works, if it's worth that extra. Might be, really might be. I don't know. This image, I mean, feels AI. This feels so AI. I'm not. Pinterest. Why is everything AI or looks AI? Is it just me? I'm looking at this creature. This is fun and not impossible. When I see things like this, that initial idea I have of not see the monster, right? It's kind of thrown out the window for a second at least. I'm like, oh, this would be so much fun. Because imagine this thing chasing you. Why would you then still about the thing about leaving your lighthouse? I just might ignore that idea of just go for it because I like that. I really like that image. What else? Can I find something similar to this? Dark mystical creature. All right. And it does feel like it would be made out of debris from the ocean that has been gathering at like beaches and things like that, or in caves, and whatever the debris gathers. So that's kind of interesting. So D&D stuff, of course. Well, that's creatures. I'm not sure about that. What else can we look at? So eerie was just way too. I mean, I see a lot of churches, magical stuff, like skulls everywhere. It's not really the feeling I want to go for. I mean, everyday stuff can be scary in the right proper um, context. I mean, lighthouses are not part of everyone's daily life, right? Um, what else can I see? Can I find some inspiration from these that can enhance the eeriness of the lighthouse image? I don't know. Not really. None of these really stick out to me. Like, speak to me if you want. Go with that. This one though. This one I like. And ignore, I guess, that person standing there. But this one, like purely on the level of abandoned stuff, like how nature tends to take back what's been there. So no mausoleums. I think that's what it's called. And then you have these things, how people built staircase up to whatever, and how leaves gather, how old, like dying plants, or this seems to be close to winter, so I'm guessing it's way too cold for summer plants. So what else? What else? Ooh. This might be a bit too fantastical. I think that's the term I'm looking for. But it's kind of interesting how it's the composition, right? Kind of like the composition of this. Let's move this aside so we can see it. So I'm not so sure I want to have this type of tree. It looks, kind of feels, I keep saying this, kind of feels AI. And I'm looking at this tree, seems to have two ends, two root ends. So you have roots down here, you have roots. I don't know if a tree would do that. I generally don't think it, no, I don't think a tree would do that. All right. Anything else? Anything else? No. It's like I'm out of proper images. Maybe not. This one's kind of fun. But we're back to Lighthouse again. So we have this image. It might be a bit too abandoned. And that building doesn't make sense. Well, you do have a porch, I guess. That I mean, how did you get up to this part? Is there like a stair? I guess there's a staircase. That's usually how you get up into another level, right? It's a lot of abandoned stuff. It's cool. I've also played with the idea that perhaps I should just create the world first. I'm not sure if that's a good approach, though. So if I just make the world I want, then I can kind of adapt everything else to it. I'm not sure. Instinctively, it feels like the poor approach to this. And that I should probably focus on the game mechanics and the rules of the game first, and then adapt everything else to those ideas or concepts. Wait, what is this? That's kind of eerie. Oh, creepy. What if this is something that haunts you? What? What if you see a human-ish character wearing something like this and just standing in front of you? Because you're supposed to be isolated. You're supposed to be alone. This thing starts popping up. Kind of classic, isn't it? Like you have this cult that keeps showing up every now and then, and the more the game progresses, the more they are involved. There is just these creepy guys with weird habits. What else? I feel perhaps we reached the end. I mean, there's a lot of alternatives. Like you have Island Lighthouse, Asnet Island, Beacon of Light. There's a lot of these. That's actually a blueprint. That's kind of nice. That's kind of fun. It's kind of nice to know that the lighthouse is actually quite a lot bigger than I thought. I have libraries, bedroom, kitchen, oil room. It's a lot of fun things. I know this thing. Visiting office room. Officer's room. Okay. Oh, okay, so you live here, but there can always be someone who comes over and like inspects, and that's their room, I guess. Provision store. It might be annoying to walk up and down these things every day. Yeah, that could be really annoying. I didn't think of that. We'll see. We'll see if I accept that. What else? What else? I feel like every time I say this is enough, something pops up. And I can see that, okay, maybe I should look into this more. A mine, perhaps? That's some images of a mine cart. It's really fantastical lighthouses. It's one that's square lighthouse. That could be fun. Hmm. Yeah, I think we're exhausted that part. So let's see if we can't. No, we can't. Just quickly sort these things. So select images, normalize. Let's go by scale, or sorry, size. That works. Oh wait, size as an image size, because there's also scale. Sure, what's the difference? I think size. Normalize size, and then range again, and do an optimal. That works. Not sure what optimal means. I'm assuming it's the smallest area, because this PureRef gets larger the bigger area you use, I think. So it's 11:30 my time. Usually I would go for 12 or like noon, or sorry, midnights. But I feel this was as a test, and I was kind of feeling they should be a bit more chill rather than anything else. I'm gonna cut it here, and hopefully this will be received well. I kind of like the idea of just sitting here and talking about various like ideas and doing some writing. You need to be moved. There we go. But either way, I am going to end it here. So if you liked what I've done, and if you see this in the future, please consider giving me a follow, or on YouTube. I'm on YouTube, Every Kindle Studio on YouTube. I do upload all my VODs, and I plan on making other types of videos, more instructional and tighter cut videos rather than these 2.5 hour long videos. And also I plan on uploading all my trailers related to any project I do in the future. So if you like that idea and you like what I do, please consider giving me a follow, a thumbs up, all those things. And I will see you hopefully in the next stream, which is on Tuesday next week, same time. So for me, that will be 9 p.m. Central Eastern time. So American time will be something completely different, and so on. And I'm not going to blabber on much more. So thank for everyone for showing up, and have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. And I'll see you on Tuesday next week. All right. Have a good one. Bye.